The Cold War. Let's start from the beginning with the Yalta Pact. The Yalta Pact was a pact started in February 4th, 1945, between Great Britain, the U.S., and the Soviet Union that took place in Yalta. This pact was mainly for the occupation of post-war Germany and the fact that the Soviet Union would declare war on Japan. Unfortunately, after the Soviet Union had broken the Yalta Pact, the Iron Curtain was formed. The Iron Curtain was the separation of the Soviet Union and the Eastern and Central European countries. And the phrase came from Winston Churchill in a speech on March 5th, 1946. Then Marshall Plan came around. Marshall Plan was supposed to aid Western European countries after World War II with $13 billion. After the Marshall Plan, though, Truman Doctrine on July 12, 1948, was a plan presented by Harry Truman, the President of the United States at the time. He had made the Truman Doctrine. It was meant to stop countries from becoming communist nations. Truman promised to protect countries in need, such as Greece and Turkey, to stop them from turning into communist nations by giving them $400 million in military aid and medical aid. NATO, aka the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, started April 4th, 1949, consisted of nations such as the UK, the US, Canada, and the other Eastern European countries. This was basically a pact that meant if the Soviet Union attacked any of the countries in NATO, it was an attack on all the countries in NATO, basically having each other's backs. Think of it like a kid at school. The kid at school is getting picked on by a bigger kid. So what does the kid do? Simple. Grabs a bunch of other kids, and if that big kid hurts that small kid again, they all attack. Warsaw Pact was started May 14th, 1955, which was basically a retort to NATO. Remember that small and big kid analogy? Now imagine that kid gets mad and decides to form his own group. If you think about it, if you water down all the politics and violence, it's petty middle school drama. Anyway, the Soviet Union gets together their own group of countries, hence creating the Warsaw Pact. Now we're taking it to China. The Great Leap Forward, started in 1958 through 1960. Let's take it back to during the time of Chiang Kai-shek. The leader of China before Mao Zedong said, "Bro, nationalism sucks. Communism is 10 times better, and I'm going to revolt." Now, even though Chiang had a better army and a bigger army, Mao's soldiers had more drive and more of a reason to fight. Kind of like a passion thing. And they were way more motivated. That's when Mao took over. When the Cultural Revolution happened, it was because Mao was afraid the people would no longer see him as a viable leader. So what exactly was the Great Leap Forward? It was a social campaign for communist China. The idea was to turn the country from agriculture-based to industrialized. After the Great Leap Forward had failed, the Cultural Revolution started in 1966 and led all the way to 1976. It was basically after Mao realized the Great Leap Forward was actually a great leap backwards, leading to millions of people dying. Now that he was really worried of being overthrown, he thought of the Cultural Revolution brainwashing students to destroying old traditions, shutting down schools, and these kids, or group of students, were called the Red Army. Mao chose students because kids were naive and didn't know better. Knowing that they had more power than their parents and teachers made them feel powerful. So all intellectuals and artists were considered basically useless. The Red Guards lasted from 1966 to 1967.